You don't know flag. You don't know flag.
Welcome to You Don't Know Flag, a podcast full of stories about retro gaming, retro computing, video games, arcade games, and technology from a guy who was there and still is. My name is Rob O'Hara, but for the next 30 minutes, you can call me Flag.
Episode 131. Fun with Boxes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 131 of You Don't Know Flag. Today is Sunday, April 14th, 2013, and I am your host, Rob Flack O'Hara. Today on You Don't Know Flack, we'll be talking about boxes. Not cardboard boxes, but the boxes that were used by phone freaks back in the 1980s and 90s. As many of you know, I am now storing the podcast on my trusty Commodore 64, and it takes about 10 minutes to load, so let me go ahead and get that started. There we go. And while the podcast is loading, we'll have a few minutes to chat during the loading time.
Loading time. Loading time. Loading time.
So, news. Let's see. What do I have in news here? Oh, I bought a new microphone. I ordered it last week, and it just came in yesterday. So I haven't really got a chance to play around with it yet, but I bought the Zoom H2. Actually, I saw the Zoom H2. I saw a comparison. Right now, I have a Blue Yeti, which, if you're not familiar with it, is this big, gigantic microphone that looks very kind of retro style. It looks like something a big radio host would use. But the Zoom H2 is about the size of a deck of cards. It's very small and portable. It has about the same quality, but it runs off of AA batteries, and it records to SD cards, so I can do recording on the go. And so that's going to be my plan in the future. I've got a few podcasts planned to do some interviews on the road and some shows with co-hosts and things like that. So that's what I'm going to be using that mic for. And I bought that mic solely with money that was earned through sponsors, people who sponsored the show, and through some of my book sales. And those have been basically from people that have heard about the books from the show. So basically the show funded the purchase of that mic. So thank you guys for supporting the show. Your money that went towards the show went to a microphone that's going to make the show a better show. Show enough. So anyway, I bought a new mic. The other thing that's been on my radar over the last day or so is Revision 2013, the demo competition in Germany. If you recall when we talked about intros and demos, computer demos, the demo scene and things like that, they still have demo parties. They don't have very many here in America anymore, but they're still big overseas, and Revision took place at the end of March, the beginning of April of this year. And as always, they have an old school category for demos, and there's several Commodore 64, there's some Amiga demos in there, there's ZX Spectrum demos, there's, for several different things, and people have put those, they do a feed, and it's been uploaded to YouTube, so if you want to check those out, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But it's amazing what people are doing in 2013 with some of those old computers. Let's see. Oh, emails. I got some emails over the last week or so, and I have those up here. The first of which is from Sean Johnson. I think I've mentioned Sean before on the show. He goes by SJ Geek. Sean says he listened to my spot on the Adventure Club podcast, and that he says that he agrees with their opinion that I'm a good storyteller, and that it was good to listen to. So I appreciate that. And also, Sean's podcast is Throwback Reviews, the Throwback Reviews podcast, which you can find at throwbackreviews.com. They just moved and got a new URL, and Sean and some of his friends are watching some classic 70s and 80s movies and doing reviews. They did Top Secret, Smokey and the Bandit, Private Eyes, and I think I saw that they're planning on doing Ghostbusters in the future. So anyway, if you like old school great movies and want to hear people talk about those and kick stuff around, that's a good podcast. So check check Sean's podcast out. I also got another email here from Lawrence Woodman. And Lawrence wrote to tell me he had a little bit of feedback about my episode about Palm Pilots. And like me, he had a Palm Pilot. He used it a lot. And like me, he doesn't really use it anymore. However, he says that his family does still use the Palm Pilot for one thing several times a week, as they joined a shopping survey. And when they go into stores and they scan barcodes of everything that they buy, and so the company that they do this for provides the scanner, and the scanner is a modified Palm Pilot with a barcode scanner attached to it. And he also said that once or twice a year the Palm Pilots break, and they send him a new one, so he suspects maybe they have a big stockpile of old Palm Pilots that are out there. But that's cool. I had not heard that that those were still being used, and that's actually pretty cool use for that technology. I mean, they're really made for that. I'm surprised that they don't have a phone app or something that somebody that you could use that for. But no, that's cool. So also Lawrence has a website as well, which is techtinkering.com, and I just started checking it out. He's got a lot of cool stuff about BBSs and Telnet BBSs and a lot of different topics like that. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes too. So anyway, a couple cool feedbacks this week. Also, I'm going to pull up the voicemail box because I see that I have 2 messages in the voicemail box. So the first one here that came in is from listener Retro Romper.
Hello, Flack. You have 2 messages. First message.
Hey, Flack. This is Retro Romper. You can reach me at retroromper@gmail.com. Anyway, I had 2 questions. One, have you done a review of Commodore Forever or Amiga Forever? I'm curious to hear how they stack up as how the emulation is and if it's actually worth buying them. And 2, could you review some beer or something else? Something nice and smooth. Maybe dark and brooding, and go with, everyone's favorite text adventure, Necrotic Drift, or a night of playing, Pac-Man or E.T. on your Amiga or Commodore 64. Anyway, those are my questions, and great show. Please keep it up, and otherwise, take care, and I'll see you in the forums. Bye.
So, if you're not familiar, there are a couple of off-the-shelf emulation packages you can buy. One is called Commodore Forever, and the other one's Amiga Forever. And these are emulators that are basically no fuss, no tinkering. You just install them, and they work. So there's no configuration, no anything like that. So the plus side to these is they work right out of the box. You throw them on a computer, install them, run them off a CD, whatever, and they just work. The downside is that they're not free. So, I mean, that's really the trade-off. If you're the type of person that likes tinkering around with these programs, getting things to work or whatever, then basically all the things that these programs do, WinVice does everything that Commodore Forever does. I mean, they've just put a slick front end on the emulator. Same thing with Amiga Forever. You could get WinUAE, the Amiga emulator, and run all the same software, do all the same stuff. But so I think the emulation on both of those programs is spot on. But that's what you're paying for. You're paying for a slick interface, like with MAME front end. So that's what you're getting with those applications. So, like I said, if you're the type of person that doesn't mind tinkering around to get stuff work, there's lots of other people have got emulators up and running, and there's lots of websites out there explaining how to do that stuff, YouTube tutorials, all that. So, but if you don't enjoy that part of it, or you can't get it to work, then those are definitely an alternative. There's another message here in the voicemail box, and I'm not sure who this one is from, so I'm just going to go ahead and play it here.
Next message.
Show. Yup. Show. Yup. Good. Yup. Good. Yup. Cow. Yup. No. Yup. Nope. Telephone. Yup. Nope. Modem. Modem.
There's always one. Always one on the voicemail box. So, well, I don't know what to say about that. Let's see. Do I have anything else here? I think that's it. If you want to send your feedback or send me an email, you can reach me at robohara@robohara.com. I've had a couple people tell me that large attachments are getting rejected from robohara@robohara.com, and it has to do with how I do my forwarding. So if you have an attachment that's more than, I think, about 5 meg, you can send it to me at Gmail, which is just robohara@gmail.com. So you can bypass the forwarder there and send me a larger attachment. Also, if you want to leave me a voicemail, if you have questions about emulation computers, or if you're aliens from outer space, you can leave me a voicemail on the You Don't Know Flack voicemail box, which is area code 206-309-9501. And the sound of the Commodore 1541's drive head banging against itself there can only mean one thing, and that is that the podcast is done loading. So with that, let's go to episode 131, Boxing. So the history of boxing goes back probably much further than most people are aware. It actually goes back to the 1950s, when AT&T released a technical manual that had some information about the phone system in it. And so this manual, people got their hands on it, and they got certain information out of this manual, and they began to realize that there were ways to manipulate the phone system. Now, that first manual didn't give the keys to the kingdom. There was a second operator manual that got released later on, and so people were able to put one and one together, so to speak, information from both manuals, and figure out how to manipulate the phone system. And these people were called phone phreaks, and that's freak with a PH, just like the PH in phone. And so the idea of phone phreaking originally, I guess a good way to explain it is like if you talk about pirates, people that copy software. There are multiple, different types of pirates. You had the people that would copy, or, the people that would break copy protection, the people that would go in and look at, the machine language or assembly or whatever, and actually figure out how to crack the copy protection that was on software. But then there were the people that just pretty much reaped the benefits of that. They didn't know the technical aspects, and I'll tell you right up front that I was one of those people. I didn't know how to do all that, but, of course I reaped the benefits by trading games and getting free games and downloading them for BBS, And then there was the third people that nobody liked, the third group of people that would actually sell pirated software, to make money off it or whatever, and no group like those people. And it was the same thing with phone phreaks. There were the type of people that were out there exploring AT&T and exploring the phone system, learning how things work, trying things. And those were the people that were just in there for the education, in there to learn how stuff worked. But then there were people that took that information, like the people that traded the software or whatever, and they built these boxes that would manipulate the phone system. We're going to be talking all about those types of boxes on this episode. And then there were the people that took those boxes and just sold them, as devices to allow people to have free phone calls or whatever. So, kind of the same correlation between those two groups. The four big main type of boxes were the blue box, the red box, the beige box, and the black box. And these boxes all got their names because people put these things, these devices, into different boxes. The legend behind the blue box was that the first one that AT&T found was in a little blue plastic box, so that's how it got its name. But that kind of became a tradition as these things were built or designed or invented or whatever, that they were given a name. And some of the ones I'll be talking about later weren't even things like the beige box isn't anything that goes inside a physical box, but it was just called beige boxing. So, like I said, this will some of these things will clear themselves up as we go through the episode. But the concept of boxing was basically that these boxes could be used to affect the phone system. And the reason that they worked is because the phone system was controlled by auditory tones, and those tones were carried in band. And what that means is the tones that managed the phone system were in the same part of the system as where your voice was. So basically, if you could figure out what those tones were and how to use them, you could play your own tones and more or less take over the phone system. And so there were, basically these tones are all what they call MF tones, which are multi-frequency tones. So they're like two tones played at the same time. And on a couple of different episodes, I have talked about security through obscurity, which is basically planning your entire security model on the fact that somebody won't figure out how it works, or that somebody won't have the ability to duplicate the way that your security system works. The classic example for security through obscurity, and I've used this before, is hiding the key to your front door under the placemat in front of your house. So you have obscured the key, and without the key, you can't get in the front door. The problem is once somebody finds the key and tells everybody else where the key is, now anybody who has that knowledge can get into your house. And so that's basically what happened with the phone system throughout the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. Was once people had the knowledge to manipulate the phone system, there wasn't anything that AT&T could do about it for many years. So anyway, the security through obscurity, as far as it was concerned, was that these tones that were done, first of all, they were obscure because you weren't supposed to know what they were, but people figured out what they were eventually through these manuals, and some by just accidental luck. And the other security through obscurity was that a normal phone could not generate these tones, but as we'll find out, there were ways around that as well. So back to AT&T, they had published these technical manuals, and it explained that these tones were used to manage the system. And the tone, they were listed in different frequencies, and the tone that would reset a long-distance trunk line was a 2600 hertz tone. Now, you may have heard of the Hacker magazine 2600. 2600, the magazine, was named after this tone. So this is basically a legendary breakthrough for phone phreaks, was discovering the exact frequency of this tone. Now, there are a couple of people, if you're interested in reading more about this, there was a very famous blind phone phreak named Joy Bubbles, who learned at an early age that he could whistle this tone into his phone line and manually take over phones. So he didn't have a device, a box, or a tool or anything like that, but he could just whistle this tone. And so later on, if you're familiar with Kevin Mitnick and the stories, he wasn't allowed to use a phone from prison for a while, actually for a long while, because they were... I guess the prosecuting attorney had told the judge that Kevin Mitnick was able to whistle into a phone and launch missiles, was the rumor at the time, which is, of course, we all know, absolutely ridiculous. But, so it could kind of be traced back to this, where Joy Bubbles was able to whistle into the phone and manipulate the phone system. There was also a very famous toy that came in Captain Crunch cereal, and it was a Captain Crunch whistle, And if you blew the whistle and it had the two little whistle holes, but if you held one of them over, it made a perfect 2600 hertz tone, which could be used, then to take over the phone system and do long distance calling. So if you've ever heard the hacker Captain Crunch, his real name is John Draper, but if you want to look him up, that's where he got his alias, was from this Captain Crunch whistle. So also there's a very famous story about blue boxing, and that blue boxes were made by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, and during their college days they made blue boxes and sold them, and the money that they made from selling blue boxes out of their garage was actually used as startup capital for Apple computers. So there's a lot of people back in that time in the 70s, that were hacker type people that got involved in phone phreaking. And so anyway, like I said, some of the early hackers they didn't really have, they were putting the pieces of this together. They had got these two different technical manuals from AT&T, and based on that, they knew a little bit about phone phreaking, and they were figuring these things out. And then there was an article that came out called Secrets of the Little Blue Box, which is an infamous article. It was published in Esquire magazine in 1971, and basically that article explained about the 2600 tone, or 2600 hertz tone, and then by dropping other multi-frequency tones, which I'm going to demonstrate here in a little while. I'm not going to be blue boxing, but I will share the tones with you. But you could drop a KP tone, which was a key press, and you could reroute basically a long-distance trunk into a free long-distance number. So now, at that time, who was doing this? Who was doing phone phreaking? Who was using blue boxes? And basically, there were several different groups. Wikipedia says that there were three groups. The first was pranksters, which is what Steve Wozniak says that he and Steve Jobs were. There's a famous story where they tried calling the Pope long distance at the Vatican using a blue box. The second big clientele for blue boxes and some of the other boxes we'll be talking about were drug dealers, because these boxes allowed you to manipulate the phone system, and it was very difficult to trace where they were coming from. So it gave people, a more intimate access into the phone system. And then the third was, like we talked about, phone hackers, which were people that were just getting in there, to learn the phone system, people that were curious. The original definition of the word hacker, not hacker like we use it today for people that, break into systems. But these were people that were just curious and wanted to know how the phone system worked. So you had these little groups, and then that article came out, and people began making blue boxes and selling blue boxes. But it still wasn't a big problem until the late 70s and early 80s, when home computers, grew in popularity, and BBSs came out, bulletin board systems. And bulletin board systems, as you know, required users to call one another, and unless, you had three choices, I guess. You could only call BBSs in your local area code, and if you lived, like we did in Oklahoma, there were a lot of BBSs here, but obviously the more popular BBSs were located on the coasts of California and Florida and New York, things like that. So you could either call long distance and pay long distance dialing fees, and back then there was even different rates for data versus voice. So you would have to pay, long distance. Sometimes it was more expensive to call long distance on a computer, or you could figure out how to use these boxes and manipulate the phone system and call long distance for free. Now, later on, what happened is people switched to MCI codes, and that I think was easier to do, so people hacked and stole and traded long-distance Sprint codes and MCI codes to call long distance. And so that kind of, in a way, replaced boxing The problem with that was if you got caught, it was very easy to trace those, and I personally know several people that got busted for doing that, and it wasn't necessarily a good thing. So anyway, like I said, the original blue box that was detected and confiscated by AT&T was in this tiny little blue plastic case, which is where it got the name for Blue Box. So what Blue Boxes did, and again, I kind of explained this, but the concept behind a Blue Box was that you could manipulate long-distance trunks. And so I am going to pull up here an old program, and this program, if you saw the post yesterday on the You Don't Know Flack page on Facebook, there was a program for the Commodore 64 called Phun. And what Phun did was it generated all these tones for you. So I'm going to crank up the speakers here, and I'll be honest with you, I played through this a few minutes ago, and I'm not sure that these tones are 100% accurate through this emulator. So I'm not sure if these would actually work or not. On the Blue Box, I think it would. But so let me pull up Blue Box here. And so the first thing you can see is that you have the numbers here. So let me turn this up. So you could dial the numbers just like dialing a phone. But if you hit F3, that gives you a 2600 hertz tone. So the idea behind the Blue Box is you would call, you'd have to get on a long distance trunk. So what you could do is call like a 1-800 number, which would be a long distance number. And once you're on there, you could seize that by hitting this 2600 tone, which is that. And then once you had that, it would reset the line, and so the line would become reset, and then it was waiting for something else to happen. And so then you could hit K, which tells it that you're going to do a key press. And then now the keys that are on this, K, key press, status, some of these other ones, a locking frequency here. These are tones that you can't do with a normal telephone. So again, security through obscurity, right? But, so what you would do is take over that line, break the trunk with that 2600, do a key press, and then using this I could dial my phone number, 405, and it would understand those tones, and now you have basically seized this long distance trunk and you could route it anywhere. And like other hacking techniques, I guess, a popular technique for a long time was to telnet through 2 or 3 separate locations. So if I wanted to hide where I was coming through the internet, I might telnet to 2 or 3 different accounts in 2 or 3 different countries. It doesn't make it impossible to trace back, but the idea of tracing, somebody back through an account in China and then Brazil and then wherever, it became a lot of legwork, so the average person, either wouldn't have the means or the desire to actually do that. And you could do the same thing with, these boxes. You could hop through multiple trunks, multiple different connections, and it would make tracing you basically impossible. So that was blue boxing. Now, another very popular box at that time was the red box. And red boxes, again, I assume that the first one was found in a small red box. But what red boxes did was allow you to use payphones for free. And so the way that they worked is, and a lot of this, if you're old enough, you may remember this, where you would pick up a payphone and hold the receiver up to your ear, and you would put a quarter in, and you would hear these little beeps. So let me pull up the red box portion here of Phun. And so you would put a quarter into a payphone, and you would hear this. And so that's, if you can't tell, that's 5 rapid beeps in a row. A dime is 2 beeps, and a nickel is just 1. So you go up to a payphone, you put a quarter in, and it plays those 5 beeps. that because those tones are inbound, like we talked about, they're analog tones that were inbound, those would go into the phone system and let them know that you put a quarter in. So what a red box, the original red boxes were basically tone dialers that had been modified from Radio Shack. So you would buy a tone dialer and then you could get different crystals and you would install it into this and you would change what the buttons did. And so you would change a button that would basically, with the right crystals and it would put the right timing in, it would make these sounds. So you could go to a payphone and press these buttons and sit here and put free quarters into a payphone, and then now you have $1 worth of quarters and you could call long distance. The phone company did catch on to red boxing, and so what they did was they made phones to where the receiver didn't work until you had put a quarter in. So you could sit here and play these tones, but the phone wasn't listening because you hadn't put a real physical quarter in. So the way to get around that was you would just pick up a payphone and call someone long distance. And then the phone would come on and say, okay, you've dialed long distance, please insert $1 to continue talking. And then you play your tones like that, and the phone would, now that the receiver's working, would recognize those tones, and it would think you're putting real money in. Later on, that stopped working, and so sometimes you would actually get broken into by an operator, and this happened to me more than once. And then the operator would say, you need to put quarters in, and then you would just play your tones, and then the operator would say, okay, and connect you through. Now, I didn't have a tone dialer red box. What I had was a modified Hallmark card that a friend of mine built for me. If you remember, there were Hallmark cards that came out in the early to mid 90s that you could open them up and record a message for someone. So you would open this Hallmark card and say, hey, happy birthday, and then give it to someone else, and then they would open the card and it would play back your message, hey, happy birthday, like that. So a friend of mine basically took one of those, pulled it out of that card, and put it in a small box for me, and wired a microphone jack into it. So instead of using the microphone, I could basically hook up my computer with a quarter or an 1/8-inch wire and play those tones, and it would record it onto that box. And then I would flip a little switch, and there was a speaker on the back, and I would press this button, and it would play those tones back. So once I had that, I would go to payphones all over the city and call everybody I knew, basically because I could. I had no real need to use this, but I just thought it was the neatest thing, and so I would go around and call people. And when I moved to Spokane, I actually took it with me, and I would go to payphones and call people back in Oklahoma and call home. And like I said, I would say it worked 90% of the time. And occasionally when the operator would break in and say, please put in more quarters, and you would play the tones. And then they would say, okay. And what happened at one point in time was that the batteries got old, and so it started playing back more slowly. And it got to where not all phones would recognize it. And so I did actually have an operator come on one time and ask me to put money into a payphone. And I played the tones, and she basically told me those weren't real tones. And I, of course, acted completely astonished and indignant. I was like, what are you talking about? How could they not be real tones, But she's like, well, they're playing much too slowly. And I was like, yeah, I think the battery on this thing's dying. And so we had a good laugh, and then she hung up on me. And I was very paranoid. Of course, this was the mid to late 90s. So I would always, if I used it, I would stay in my car and leave it in drive so that, if the popo came, I could take off. Like they're going to call the police because you stole $1 worth of long distance or whatever. But I would also park where my car tag wouldn't be pointing towards a convenience store, because I was always afraid they would have cameras inside or something. They would get my tag. And then when I dialed, I would wear gloves. So basically, there's no proof that I ever did that. So there you go. But yeah, so red boxes, and for me, red boxes were just a big game. I mean, it was just something fun to do, you know. And then I used to subscribe to 2600 magazine. And in 2600 magazine, in 1995, they ran a story about a fellow named Bernie S. And it's not his real name, but Bernie S. Was standing outside of a convenience store and was making a transaction for these crystals to modify tone dialers. And police saw him do this, and they thought they had witnessed a drug deal. And so they went up, and basically they searched him, and they found this tone dialer and stuff, and they arrested him. So he got arrested in March of 1995. And basically, you can look on Wikipedia, or you can look on 2600 for the story of Bernie S. But basically, once he was arrested, Bernie then published information about the Secret Service. He published the location of their offices and some of the people's phone numbers and other private information. He published some of their photos. And basically, what we have all learned in our lives is that, right or wrong, there are certain people that you shouldn't make mad. And one of those groups is the United States Secret Service. And so basically they declared that Bernie S. was, quote, a danger to society for having too much information. Even though all the information that he got and that he published was publicly available. And so they threw him in jail in March, and they decided to have his trial in September. So there have been lots of cases, if you know the history of Kevin Mitnick, if you know the history of several quote-unquote dangerous hackers that have been arrested throughout the years. A right to a speedy trial is not a right that many of these people have received. And so basically in September of 95, so this is 6 months of being in jail, Bernie S. pled guilty to possession of technology which could be used in a fraudulent manner. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this podcast, you are in possession of technology that could be used in a fraudulent manner. I just played blue box and red box tones on a Commodore 64 emulator. So we're all guilty of having technology that could be used in a fraudulent manner. So this is one of those BS charges that they throw at somebody. So he was released the next month in October. So then what happened to Bernie S. was they basically went back and arrested him again for a probation violation because they said he tampered with evidence because he took batteries out of a tone dialer. And so they rearrested him. Now this is a guy, by the way, who's pled guilty to owning a tone dialer that he bought at Radio Shack. Okay, that's his crime. They arrested him and set bail at $250,000, which is more than most murderers get. I mean, for a nonviolent, crime, it's crazy. He was then sentenced for 6 to 24 months in prison. While he was awaiting a parole hearing, someone sent him a fax while he was in prison. And so he was then charged with misuse of the telephone system because someone faxed him a fax that he didn't ask for. So then when he tried to appeal that, they put him in maximum security. I mean, it just goes on and on the way they treated this guy. At one point, he was moved to high security, and when he got there, these violent offenders attacked him, and they broke his arm and they broke his jaw. When he asked the prison for help at the time. They wouldn't help him. Then he tried calling people outside, and they wouldn't let him use the phone. I mean, it's just a horrible thing that happened to this guy. I got to meet Bernie S. at Nauticon in 2007. He was there with Emmanuel Goldstein from 2600 Magazine. And I only talked to him for a few minutes. They actually, I had the honor, and I would say honor, of having those two attend one of my presentations, or my presentation at Nauticon on self-publishing. And, to meet somebody like that and, to go online and see all the stuff they went through, it's just a good reminder that, like I said, all this red boxing, blue boxing to us as kids. I had a friend who was blue boxing regularly just to call BBSs to download games, and we all thought, it was cool or funny or whatever. But every now and then you would see a story like this, and it would remind you that it wasn't all fun and games when it came to law enforcement and the phone company. So. Beige boxes. Beige boxes were a third type of box. Like I said, we covered blue boxes, red boxes. Beige boxes were essentially a lineman's handset. And if you're not familiar with a lineman's handset, that's these big blue or red phone that you used to see hanging from the phone guy's belt. So the guy would have the big phone, and it would have, all the numbers on, or number pad to dial on the back, and then it would have alligator clips hanging off of it. And so with one of those, you could go attach those clips to a phone line or to a pair, inside a phone box, and check for dial tones and do things like that and dial out. Now, so what a beige box was essentially a modified phone where you would take phone cord and strip out the wires and attach alligator clips to it. So, that's kind of a case where the name beige box or beige boxing became synonymous with doing that, even though nobody ever had one that was beige. I mean, you would just, take a small phone and strip the wires and put alligator clips, but that was known as beige boxing. The funniest beige boxing story I know of, and I think I talked about this. I know I talked about it in Commodore, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it on the podcast before, but there was a guy that we knew in the Brotherhood of 405, and his name was Ozymandias. And I went to a party at his house one time, and asked to use his phone, and so he handed me a phone, and when I picked it up, there was someone already on the phone, and so I hung it back up, and I said, "Oh, somebody's using your phone." And he said, "Oh, hang on for a second." And so I noticed that the phone line that the phone was attached to went out his window. And so the phone box to the entire apartment complex was right outside his window. And so basically that's all he did for a phone was he was beige boxing. So he would just, open this box up and move down to another pair until we found one that nobody was talking on and that you got a dial tone. And then once he did, he handed me the phone back and I was able to make my call. So that's what beige boxing was just modified phone with alligator clips that you could attach to phone terminals and get a dial tone out of. A fourth type of box that was apparently very popular, but one that I didn't personally ever witness being used was called a black box. And what a black box supposedly did was it operated off the principle that your phone, the phone line, maintained a certain voltage whenever it was ringing, but when you answered the phone, that voltage would drop. So according to, these old docs, these old text files that got passed around, the voltage on your line when it was ringing is 36 volts. But when you answer the phone, it dropped down to 10 volts. So what the idea was is you would hook this box up inside, to your phone, and someone would call you. So the voltage is at 36 volts. You flip this box on, and it would maintain that 36 volts to the phone line, and then you would answer it, and since the box had batteries in it, it would maintain this voltage on the phone line. So the phone company didn't notice that you had answered your phone. So to them, it still looked like the phone was just ringing. And of course, if you call long distance, you don't get charged for a phone line ringing, only when somebody answers. So, according to legend, these worked for about 10 minutes, and then the phone company would notice that, this phone's been ringing for 10 minutes, and it would hang up on you. So, Now, I pulled up two different documents. If you go to textfiles.com, textfiles.com, of course, has a huge collection of old BBS text files. And if you go to textfiles.com/phreak, that's with a PHREAK /boxes, there's an entire directory of boxes plans. And these were the types of files that got traded around on BBSs. So you would download these and find out, oh, okay, well, there's a black box or a brown box or a blue box or whatever. And it would have the instructions on how to make them. Now, one thing hackers were not really known for is quality control. So when you go through these, like I pulled up two different ones for black boxes, and one says that the voltage of a black box needs to maintain 36 volts. The other one I read says 70 volts. So at some point it seems that you could, build something that would potentially damage your phone line or your health. So, somebody could theoretically modify one of these. You could modify one and say, okay, well, this works, but you need to hook up a car battery and re-upload that. And I'm sure files like that, there's some famous files that got passed around about smoking banana peels and stuff. And I know people that tried it just because, I saw it on a BBS. So a lot of people, didn't think, oh, well, I've downloaded something that could actually harm me or harm my computer or my phone line or get me in trouble or whatever from a BBS. But the fact is that typically you didn't know where these files had come from or if they had been modified or anything like that. So anyway, those were the four main types of boxes. Again, those was the blue box, the red box, the beige box, and black box. But there were hundreds of different types of boxes out there. And so just going through the text files directory here, some of the ones, and I remember reading about some of these at the time. There's a pink box, and the pink box connected two phone lines together to make three-way. So if you had two phone lines in your house, now all these boxes contain schematics that were drawn with ASCII characters. So it would show like little things where resistors were supposed to go or whatever, and how much voltage and stuff. And a lot of times they were messed up because they were drawn in 40 column or 80 column and then switched, But, typically if you knew what you were doing, you could decipher what someone had drawn here. But still, seems kind of, a little bit of a leap of faith to download something that you don't know who designed it or whatever and put these together. But anyway, so the pink box, it had plans, and you could wire this up and you could turn your two phone lines into three-way. A purple box allowed you to put people on hold. That was the same kind of thing as the black box, where it would maintain that voltage even though you hung your phone up. There was a plaid box, and plaid box is an old school box that says it enables touch tones, I guess you would say, on a pulse-only phone line. And this goes back to the days where the phone company actually charged you extra to enable touch-tone phones in your home. So you would pay more if you had a touch-tone phone. And so this box supposedly allowed you to use touch tones if you were just paying for a pulse-only phone line. This one is called a busy box. And this is another one where it doesn't even go in a box, but what it was is basically it was instructions on how to short out someone's phone line, and what you did was you go to their phone box outside their house and get a little strip of wire or something with alligator clips or just wire, and basically you connect the red and green terminals together, which would short out their phone line. So again, it's not really a box, but all these things as part of the Phreak culture were just given, box names. There was a cheese box, which basically was a system to forward your phone line to the phone company and make it think that your phone line was a payphone. So you could use the cheese box to turn your home phone into a payphone, and then you could use a red box to use those dialing tones and dial long-distance calls for free. There was a gold box which sat in between two phone lines and allowed you to dial in to one phone line and then out the other. A noise box which added line noise. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but there was that. And then there were these two boxes which I think someone built for me. It might have been someone... one of the computer things I went to, but there was a neon box and a music box, and they're kind of the opposite of each other. And what a neon box did was had a 1/4-inch output that you would add to your phone line for recording phone calls, and then there was the music box was a 1/4-inch input for playing music to people. So you could like run a wire out of your stereo, like a headphone wire, into your phone and play music for people. And I had a little box that someone had put together for me, probably someone's little Radio Shack science experiment. And I had a little switch for in and out, so that's kind of my little thing. It was like combined. But I had something that someone had built me like that. Then there were all these boxes that you have to kind of question if these actually work. One is called a blast box, which is basically, it tells you that by boosting the voltage to your phone, you can actually make your voice louder on the other end. Now, I don't know that much about especially old school telephone systems. I mean, I do in certain parts of them, obviously, but I'm not sure the logic applies there, that by adding the voltage to your phone that you would make your voice louder on the other end. And then there's a blotto box, and the blotto box is kind of infamous, and that the idea was that you could actually like damage phone lines or shock other people and stuff by hooking up a generator to your phone line or something. And that's just dumb, and that's obviously not going to work. But you have to wonder if if these things that were written, if they're serious or if they're tongue in cheek. It's kind of hard to tell, and you also wonder if there were some kids somewhere, secretly planning about hooking a generator up to their phone line to, destroy their neighbor's phone or something like that. So anyway, you had all these different kinds of phone boxes, and these files, like I said, got traded on BBSs. They got traded around, and the information was out there. So people were actually doing this stuff. Now, what happened to boxing? So why aren't people doing blue boxing today? Why aren't people still red boxing and doing all these things? And there were basically 3 different factors that killed phreaking. The first thing is that phone systems got upgraded. So back in the day, you had these old analog systems like 5ESS I was familiar with. When those things got upgraded to 7ESS, which was a digital switching system, those analog tones didn't work anymore. They were now out of band, and so the phone system had moved over to digital switching, and so basically a lot of these things quit working. Things that required you, or that relied on analog signals to go through the phone system, they didn't work anymore. Now, I would say that killed a lot of these boxes, but not all, because I know for a fact, I have read several times that red boxing no longer works. I read, before I ever got a red box, and this is the payphone one, I read that red boxing didn't work, and then when I got that red box, I went and tried it, and it worked just fine. And then I read a thing, a year or two later that said, well, red boxing's now officially dead. It still worked. There's payphones. It's called a COCOT, COCOT, which is I'd have to look, coin operated, customer owned telephone. So, I just did that off the top of my head. So what a COCOT was a payphone that was not owned by the phone company. It was owned by a private business, and you would see these. They would look different than a normal AT&T phone. Usually they would have some sort of identification on it that would say customer owned or something, but a lot of the security measures that AT&T put into their phones didn't get put into those phones. So even when AT&T was cutting off the receiver handsets and things where red boxes wouldn't work, COCOT phones still worked. So I'm sure at least half a dozen times throughout the years I read that red boxing doesn't work anymore, and I haven't tried red boxing in I don't know, long time, let's say 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. But the last time I tried it, it still worked. So I'm sure at some point, it would get cut off, that it wouldn't work anymore, and it may not work anymore today. But a lot of these things worked for much longer than people assume they worked. And I'm just talking about the United States. There are a lot of third world countries that have outdated phone systems where all of these things still work. So, what doesn't work in the US or, Canada, UK, things like that, may work in other parts of the world. So anyway, but that's the first thing, is that basically phone systems got upgraded. The second thing was the internet. And if you think about it, like I said, the biggest people for years that were using boxes, blue boxes, all these things, were computer users who were wanting to call long-distance BBSs and not pay for the phone calls. But once you got to the internet, it was just a local phone call. You would just dial your local internet provider or AOL's 1-800 number or however you got on the information superhighway. But it eliminated those phone calls. You didn't have to call long distance for BBSs anymore. So once that happened, the desire, the need to use these went away. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing that killed boxing almost completely was cell phones and free long-distance calls. So, why would you... There's no need to red box at this point to use a payphone to call long distance, and you have a cell phone and you can call long distance for free. On nights and weekends, at least. Let me look up... one of the most annoying things now is it's almost impossible to Google for Redbox information because all you get is that stupid movie rental place. There is an iPhone app called Phreaking Boxess, which I have on my phone, and I gotta think it's completely useless, but it's so fun in a old school ironic type of way. And Phreaking Boxess, which by the way costs 99 cents on iTunes, has blue box, red box, green box, and silver box tones built into it. So the funny thing is, you're using a device that allows you to call long distance for free to do this, so there's no real practical use for this at this point. But it's still out there. So I think it's cool that people still keep that alive. I think the thing for me about boxes was not, it was never about stealing long distance phone calls or anything about that. For me, what it was just that there was this, a system, a phone system that we understood as well as the phone company. I'm sure there were secrets, no more secrets, right? But that people were inside, that people had got in through the exterior defenses, and once people got in and started figuring out that these tones would do things, and that you could actually manipulate, and that they AT&T or the phone company couldn't keep people out. Once you got in, it was like metaphorically exploring a cave or some area you weren't supposed to be, but you didn't have to go to wherever that cave was. That cave was wherever the nearest phone was, wherever the nearest payphone, wherever the nearest handset was, your entry to that little adventure world. So I think it was a very interesting time, and like I said, I don't make any claims that I invented any, I wasn't doing any of that experimenting type stuff. Basically I was the bottom feeder, where people had figured this stuff out, and then they streamlined it and they put it into programs, and then, eventually we got, the bottom feeders. That's what I call the people that, were at the receiving end of that information, and then you would go use it to our advantage or whatever. So, that's where I was in all this. But I don't know, I just think it was a cool time where, now, and I don't know, it seems like a lot of what's happened with hacking is the old school spirit of getting into something to see how it works, or that adventurous, fun prankster kind of spirit is gone. Now it's you get in so that you can get people's credit cards and post them in Russian forums and get $1 each for them or whatever. So that original spirit, that adventurous kind of spirit, is gone, and so is the gone. Good Lord. But what we also lost is that slap on the wrist that came, when they caught somebody playing around on the phone system. They might, turn your phone off, or they might do something. Now they prosecute you, and so it is a different world. It's a different time now. But it was a neat time. I enjoyed living through it. I enjoyed the things that I did and the things that my friends did, and the mystery, I guess, was the thing that I enjoyed, to seeing these files and just trying and seeing what would work, what didn't work, and wondering what some of these things would work. So that about wraps up this episode of You Don't Know Flack. I hope you guys liked the little history lesson this week. Next week, I'm actually leaving out of town, but I'm not leaving until Monday, so I should have enough time to get a show out on Sundays. That's the plan. And then the following weekend, I will be in Greensboro, North Carolina, and one of my listeners who lives in the Greensboro area has been bugging me, not bugging me, but requesting a show about skateboarding video games. So I'm hoping that while I'm in the Greensboro area, I can hook up with this person and record with my new Zoom portable microphone and record an episode about skateboarding video games. So maybe we'll hear that in a couple weeks. That's the plan anyway. So once again, thanks for tuning in to You Don't Know Flack. Thanks to everybody that emailed me. If you want to email me, it is Rob O'Hara at robohara.com. I love getting feedback, hearing what you guys think about the show. If you want to leave me a voicemail, the voicemail box is 206-309-9501. So keep that stuff coming in. Thanks everybody for supporting the show. Thanks for supporting me, and I will see you guys next week.